I want to start with something April and I have navigated ourselves, and not always gracefully. When you bring kids into a blended family, you bring two completely different sets of money habits, money histories, and money philosophies. And then you're supposed to raise financially responsible kids together while honoring each other's approach and not undermining each other in front of them. April has a naturally more structured approach to this. I will admit that I have, on more than one occasion, quietly slipped our son some extra cash when she wasn't looking. I'm not recommending this approach. Today we're talking about something that doesn't get nearly enough attention. How do you raise financially confident kids when you have his, hers, and ours? April, let's start at the foundation. Why is teaching kids about money actually harder in a blended family than in a traditional family?
Why is teaching money in a blended family harder? Because you don't have one household with one set of rules. You might have two houses with completely different approaches. One parent gives an allowance with no strings attached. The other expects kids to earn everything. One bails them out of every financial mistake. The other is letting consequences do the teaching. Kids figure this out immediately. They know exactly which house to go to when they run out of money. And that's not a character flaw, that's just kids being kids. But it does mean the parent trying to build good habits is constantly working uphill. There's the step parent dimension too. A step parent who tries to set financial limits with a stepchild can run into real resistance. Because in the kid's mind, you're not my parent. You don't get to set my rules. So the foundation has to be a conversation between the adults. Not necessarily identical rules across both households, but at least shared values. What are you actually trying to build here? So, what do you do when the other household operates completely different? Different rules, different values, maybe even significantly different income.
What do you do when the other household teaches money completely differently than you do? Here's the honest answer. You focus on your house. You cannot control what happens at the other household. You cannot force the other parent to require chores, to stick to an allowance, or to let consequences play out. Trying to do so usually creates conflict, and the kids end up getting caught in the middle. What you can control is your household. What are the rules? What work earns what? What happens when the money runs out? And what values are being modeled by the adults every single day? The goal isn't consistency across both households. The goal is enough consistency within your household. The kids internalize the principles, not just follow the rules when you're watching. And sometimes the contrast actually helps. Kids who have experienced both money appears when you ask for it and you earn it and manage it yourself often develop very strong instincts about which approach actually serves them better. You can't fight the other household, build yours instead. What about the step parent question? Should a step parent set financial expectations and limits with stepchildren?
Should a step parent set financial rules with stepchildren? Here's what we tell couples: the bio parent leads, the step parent supports. This is one of the most common friction points in blended families. A step parent who tries to enforce an allowance system or take away privileges for overspending can face real pushback. And not just from the kids, but from their spouse, who may feel their parenting is being overridden. The approach that works: the biological parent makes the decision and delivers it. The step parent reinforces it. As a household, this is how we handle money. Not, your step parent said you can't have that. Over time, as the step parent relationship deepens, those rules naturally evolve. But in the early stages of a blended family, or with teenagers especially, trying to lead as a step parent on financial rules usually backfires. Decide together privately, present it as a household decision. The kids don't need to know who came up with it. That's the approach.
And by the way, our guide, Seven Mistakes Blended Families Make with Their Money, covers the conversation side of this really well. Mistake number 7 on that list. Link is in the description. So let's talk about something practical. How do you actually use real spending to teach money skills, not just explain it in theory?
How do you teach kids real money skills in a blended family, not just theory? The most effective method we've seen: use real money for real decisions. Here's the concept. Instead of let's go school shopping, which is essentially a blank check, you say, here's $250 in cash. Whatever you don't spend, you keep. The whole dynamic shifts immediately. Now they're comparing prices. Now they're asking, do I really need this? Every dollar they save is a dollar in their pocket. And when the money runs out, it's gone. The moment you pull out the credit card, the lesson disappears. The blended family piece: try to get some alignment from the other household. Not identical systems, just enough consistency that kids aren't gaining the gap. But if you can't get that, don't wait. Focus on your house. Kids who come home from a shopping trip with money left over and feel genuinely proud of themselves, that sticks. Even when the other house does it completely differently. Real money, real decisions, real consequences. That's the lesson. Okay, so last one. Should all the kids in a blended family get the same allowance, or does it depend?
Should all kids in a blended family get the same allowance? Here's the framework. The goal isn't equal treatment. The goal is each child learning responsibility for their own life. Equal in a blended family is genuinely complicated. A 16-year-old and a 10-year-old don't have the same needs. A child who lives with you full time has different expenses than one who's with you every other week. Trying to make everything identical can actually create more friction than it resolves. What matters more than the amount is the system. Is there a clear expectation of what the allowance covers? Is there a way to earn more? Is there a real consequence when it runs out? Or does a parent just bail them out? A 10-year-old managing $20 a week and making real choices with it is learning more than a teenager who gets whatever they ask for. The conversation to have with your spouse: what are we trying to teach and what system gets us there? Age-appropriate amounts, clear expectations, and consistent follow-through. That's the framework. And that raises something we hear from a lot in blended families, and it's an uncomfortable one. What do you do when your household can afford to give kids significantly more than the other household can? How do you handle that without creating resentment in the kids, between the households, or inside your own marriage?
What do you do when there's a big income gap between households in a blended family and your kids see the difference? Here's the answer. You can't pretend the gap doesn't exist, and you shouldn't try. Kids are perceptive. They know one house has a nicer car. They know one vacation has a camping trip and the other was a resort. Pretending otherwise doesn't protect them. It makes them just trust you. What you can do is be age appropriately honest. Different families make different choices with money is true and sufficient for younger kids. Older kids can handle more. We're fortunate, and with that comes responsibility, which is exactly why we have expectations around how you manage what you're given. The danger in a blended family is using money as a way to be the fun house or to compete with your kids' affection. That's not generosity, that's insecurity. And kids internalize it as manipulation even when they can't name it. Give what you can give thoughtfully. Set expectations proportional to what you provide. And don't apologize for your situation. Model gratitude instead. So, the core idea: focus on your household. You can't control what happens at the other house, but you can build a strong foundation in yours.
IO parent leads on financial rules with stepkids, step-parent supports, presented as a household decision.
Use real money for real spending decisions. Cash is a great teacher.
And equal doesn't always mean fair. Focus on the system, not the number.
Our guide, 7 Mistakes Blended Families Make with Their Money, covers the conversation side of this in depth. These are exactly the discussions that don't happen until there's a problem. Link in the description.
White Oak Planning is built entirely around blended family financial planning. Every video on this channel is designed for your situation, not generic retirement content. Subscribe if this is your family.
And if you want to talk through your specific family situation, that's a connect call. Same link, it's what we do. Money is one of the top reasons second marriages struggle. Don't let it be yours.